Mississippi State as well. Hey, by the way, congratulations to another Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. Robert Griffin III is going to be a part of the next class of the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. That'll be inducted next year. So RG3 in the High School Hall of Fame and now will be in the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. And Ty Detmer knows about all of that. Texan himself joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Ty, thanks for your time. We appreciate that. How ironic is it to you that Brigham Young is playing Baylor for the first time in almost 30 years in the same year that all of a sudden Brigham Young will one day be a part of the same conference?
Well, I think it's pretty ironic. I think it's a great opportunity to start getting in the mix there. I know the game's been scheduled for a while before any of the talk really even probably started, but I think everybody's excited to be from BYU to be playing in the Big 12 and to be a part of that conference and a part of the tradition that it's had.
What do you think of the job that Coach Satake has done so far at BYU?
He's done a great job. I mean, last year was a whole different year for everybody. And, they were able to have a great season, I think go 11-1 and have more players playing in the NFL now. Guys get drafted, which hadn't really happened in the past few years before he got there. And so, I think everybody's excited the direction the program's going. And now with the addition of the Big 12, that's only going to help, recruiting and all the things that go with it as well.
Did you ever imagine that BYU was going to be able to step up to that next level, or did that see something that was like a little bit out of reach?
I know there was talk a few years ago with the Big 12 wanting to expand and talking about it, and then it never really materialized. So I think at some point, at least everybody up there, we felt like, BYU being a Power 5 type of conference at some point or in the discussion. And college football is ever changing and always evolving. So, here we are.
What do you think it means to the fan base?
It's big for the fan base. I think it, gives credibility to the program that they've been doing the right things and doing it the right way in order for a conference to invite them to join. And I know for our fans as an independent, it was always tough because you just don't feel like you really got a home. There's none of the all-conference honors. You're not playing for a conference championship. And now going forward, we'll have those opportunities to get engaged and have that maybe develop some new rivalries between teams that we haven't really had before.
You know what? I never thought about it. They don't get player of the weeks, like no all conference. I never thought about that as an independent. But yeah, that's right, and that's kind of amazing to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, when I went up there, they had the team room and had pictures of guys that were all American and all conference, over the years, and we kind of lost that when you go independent. You don't have those opportunities for players to be recognized, and so it'll be nice to be able to start that new tradition.
How big is it also to have a better shot at getting a national championship trophy? I mean, it's not impossible now, Ty, but it's as impossible as it could get given the current rules.
Yeah, it was. It was, a very long shot to be able to get invited to get into the playoffs without being in a conference and having the conference championship game and strength of schedule. I think BYU's done a good job over the last few years with playing as tough a teams as they could play, but towards the end of the year when everybody else is playing conference games, then you're just kind of taking what you can get, and the last part of the schedule was always kind of lean back then because other teams they're focused on their conference and trying to win that, and BYU was kind of caught just taking whatever they could get at that point.
Ty, when you won the Heisman Trophy, when that was announced, RG3, we mentioned him just a minute ago. He's going into another Hall of Fame here in Texas for the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. And, of course, you being a Texan and what that means to you as well. But when you heard your name, what actually went through your mind or your heart or your soul?
It's tough to describe. I mean, it's kind of a surreal outer body experience a little bit. At the time, we were in Hawaii, and I was the only one that could hear it, and the whole team was around, which was pretty nice and unique, and glad to have those guys around because they were as big a part of it as anybody. But it was just kind of one of those moments where it's you can't believe it's, they did call your name, and that's going to be part of what follows you around the rest of your life, So it was a special moment, something I'm always proud to be a part of.
Did you freeze for a second? I mean, did you think this isn't real, or I've got to go up there and get this trophy now? And
No, it was, the initial shock of hearing your name was kind of like, oh, we got it, and then it was, the celebration kind of ensued with teammates and coaches, and then, we had to go play a game. But I remember those few hours we had before the game where we went back to the hotel room and you're just sitting there by yourself, kind of like, we didn't have cell phones back then to get on and post things or see what people were saying. But, you just kind of sitting there by yourself, kind of like, man, that's crazy. That just happened, So it was pretty special moment.
Yeah, you would have had 1 million followers on Twitter at this point. In this day and age. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I didn't want to see what they had to say.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a different. Now that's interesting because you said you were in Hawaii for a game, and now, of course, it's a drawn out, almost Academy Award type of deal that they have, and it's after the season is over. So it wasn't like back in the day, and I know that means because I'm old, but it was kind of in some old dark ballroom then as well. So you weren't even there when they announced it?
No, it was a week earlier, and I think teams are still kind of finishing up the season.
Mm-hmm.
We were playing Hawaii, which gave us that extra 12th game. When you played Hawaii, you got one more game, and so that was our final game of the year. And then, like you said, you go back to the old downtown athletic club, which I think after 9/11 it got condemned, but it was kind of like you think it's going to be this fancy place, and it was an old, athletic club, and they had a couple floors which were designated for the Heisman, which were pretty neat, special to be able to go in there before everything got shut down. But it was just the tradition and the history, and then being able to meet a lot of the former winners that next weekend was something I'll never forget.
I mentioned RG3 in the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. You're a part of that. The state that we're in, your home state, and how deep it is with all the history of the greatest athletes in so many places. Is that one of the greatest honors that's ever been bestowed on you?
It is for me. My dad was a high school football coach
Sure.
for over 50 years, so I knew exactly what that meant to be a part of that group, and to be a part of a Texas Sports Hall of Fame, just with the tradition of Texas football and all the things that go with it. That's definitely one of the highlights of my career, is being able to be a part of that, because of the tradition that Texas has with sports in general, but especially football, and to be recognized by the state of Texas for that was special for our family.
So are you still at the Queen Creek? Is that right? American Leadership Queen Creek in Arizona?
Yes, sir. This is my first year coaching here. I worked as an athletic director for the district last year, and they talked me into getting back into coaching and having a great time with the boys here. So we're having a good season and enjoying every minute of it.
And that's not the first time you've been coaching. In fact, you were at Brigham Young for a little bit with Coach Sataki, and you have been coaching. You've coached in Texas as well. Is that just because of your father, Sonny? Is that in your blood?
It is. That's what I grew up with, and obviously are comfortable around football and young men and locker rooms and all those things. So it's just something that I grew up with and appreciate, every opportunity you get. And so it's great to be back in coaching. I wasn't sure if I would coach again or not, and doing camps and those kind of things, but now full time as a head coach again, you're all in, and equipment manager, part-time trainer, all those things that go into being a high school football coach.
Of course, Coy was a really good player at Colorado as well. Your father, there's a lot of times when people look at who invented this wide open passing game. Does his name get mentioned enough as somebody that was also a part of this?
I think it does. Back when I was playing high school in the late 80s, we were throwing it 30 times a game, which back then was a ton, and it kind of neutralized the defenses that were built to stop the option or the run, and so we were able to kind of use our talent that we had in high school to maximize, an opportunity to get guys in space. And he was one of those guys that just believed in the passing game and never really had a big time job where he went in where he just had dominant teams. So he had to be creative and create opportunities to get skilled guys in space and get them the ball.
I was on the phone yesterday with Margene Hooks, who's now he's I guess a trainer. He does a lot of work with the athletes and wide receivers who are coming out of high school in the summer. He mentioned that he's the one that allowed you to wear jersey number 14.
I was a little before Margin, so and Margin's he's been a great ambassador for BYU in the state of Texas, working with kids and always promoting BYU when he does it. But I think I had Gifford Nielsen allowed me to wear 14, so I was appreciative of that.
And think about those quarterbacks: you, Gifford Nielsen, Jim McMahon. There's so many. Steve Young, excuse me. It's nuts, right? The tradition of what was that like knowing
Zach Wilson
now, Hall. What's that like when you came in knowing the history of that quarterback room?
Well, and like I said, when I first got there, you see the pictures on the wall and you see the Davey O'Brien Awards on the wall, and when you first come in, it's like, man, that would be cool if I could have my picture on the wall someday, and so. No one, that was a draw for me. I grew up in Texas, didn't know anything about BYU and had seen them play on TV throwing the ball around and was like, man, hey, there's a college team throwing it a lot, so that piqued my interest. And then you go up there and you learn more about it and the quarterback tradition there and the guys that have played before you. It's like, okay, if I can be successful here, it's a great opportunity to play in the NFL, and that was my dream as a little kid, to have an opportunity to play there someday in the NFL, and BYU was the perfect fit for me to be able to go and continue doing what we had done in high school. And our offenses, it was kind of eerie how similar they were, and the background on the offenses were similar. Back, my dad got it from Paul Brown back, in the day, and kind of took it and tweaked it, and then kind of added to it there at BYU.
Ty, if you don't mind me asking another question, we had a caller a minute ago talk about how teams are being hurt now because of the transfer portal at the quarterback position and maybe elsewhere, because you always had somebody in the background marinating, not just some blue chip who was on the roster, but a guy that might have been a third or fourth year redshirt type player. Do you see that affecting maybe sometimes the quarterback room because they can now leave as quickly as they can?
Yeah, for sure. The developmental part of playing quarterback is lost a little bit because kids think they need to come in and play right away and play their freshman year. And if I'm not, then okay, they're very impatient right now. And, sometimes they need to go, but I like to see kids stick it out 2 or 3 years and give it a shot and see if they can earn the chance to play. And you look at BYU last year, you had Zach Wilson, Jaron Hall sitting there, Baylor Romney sitting there. All three of those guys have won games for BYU and played well, and all three of them could probably start other places. But, Jaron and Baylor are there, and they've kind of gone back and forth here with Jaron had a rib injury, and now Baylor stepped in and won a big game at Utah State. And so, they've kind of hung in there with their group, and it just adds stability. And when one guy goes down, you're not all of a sudden to your number 3 or 4 quarterback, because you've got a true backup that's been there a couple years and knows the system, and the team feels real comfortable when any of those guys go in because they've stuck it out and they've hung in there. But some of these other teams, you go from 1 to 4 real quick when 2 guys leave in the spring.
Ty, thank you, man. It's great to have you on the show for all the things you've done. We appreciate it. Enjoy and good luck with the rest of the year.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Ty Detmer, American Leadership Queen Creek football program head coach, put up silly numbers as a high school player in Texas and, of course, at Brigham Young. And he was in the NFL. He played a lot of places: Green Bay, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Cleveland, Detroit, Atlanta. And again, kind of bounced around and was always available. I remember those times when he was both with Green Bay and also with
I always
Philadelphia.
thought he would wind up, because he was in the NFL a long time as a backup quarterback, he would be an NFL coach.
Kind of like Wade Wilson became
Doug
a late
Peterson.
Wade Wilson. Yeah, someone like that. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Do y'all realize like how many connections there really are with these staffs? I mean, like there's the obvious, well, Aranda hired Jeff Grimes and Eric Mateos and was it Matt Mitchell, I think, as well, the quality control coach. But do y'all know, okay, so for example, who was Baylor's head coach on January 1st, 2016?
The head coach?
Well,
The head
Still
coach
Art
of Baylor.
Briles, right?
Yeah, still Art Briles. But that was the day that Aranda was announced to be heading to LSU as defensive
From
coordinator. Who did he replace?
No, it's from
He went to
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Dave Aranda.
Okay.
So January 1st, 2016, Art Briles is still head coach at Baylor. Dave Aranda's hired as LSU DC. Who did he replace?
At LSU?
Yes.
Bo Pelini, right?
No, Pelini was just a couple of
Kevin Steele. That's who he
Steele.
replaced. There's
Yeah.
one connection there. I mean, there's also multiple connections that Aranda mentioned from, BYU's assistant head coach and going all the way back to like Redlands High School when he was first starting out as a head coach and having conversations with him. But yeah, I mean, back then, you think about all that's changed at Baylor since January 1st of 2016. But yeah, the day that Aranda got hired, he was replacing Kevin Steele, who was on that staff with him at that time. It was Jeff Grimes, and like I could go on and on and on about like all the ways that these guys connected, but it's very interesting, and that's why I really think that both teams are going to be, chin straps on, ready to go, ready to play, because, regardless of if Baylor's more talented or BYU or whatever way you view it, I'm expecting these two teams to come in here and just physically want to whip each other. I mean, that's what I'm expecting on Saturday.
I think it's going to be a hell of a game. I think David Aranda even said to me yesterday, and he may have said this in the presser, that two similar programs, the way they run, the way they do, I'm looking forward to it. I really am. When last year cleared, and thank God it did when it did, when I started to look down the road, when they finally started having some legitimate names on their non-conference schedule, Brigham Young, Utah, Oregon, Auburn. This is kind of that stretch. They've had a couple of others, Duke, and there's been but I love this. I love this game. I love the fact they're playing the game, and I think it's just crazy. It's the year that they actually are going to a different Big 12 here soon, with Brigham Young coming in during the summer of 2023. Mac Rhodes will join us today. We'll take a break.